because this is a really important topic that affects our community in more ways than we realize. It's a crime that affects people of all ages, race, ethnicity, socioeconomics, education levels. And today you're going to hear from community members that we collaborate with, as well as 2 survivors, and hear their stories and just the courage of what it takes to overcome these types of crimes and to have a community that's like healthy, because we're really doing this really for our future and for our children. So my first guest, we'd like to start off with a prayer, and this is a Karuk elder from the Karuk tribe. I'd like to introduce Michael Tom.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to start off saying that this vigil is very important to the tribe because we have a lot of abuse amongst our members, and we want to correct it and help the best way we can. So, thank you for being here with us each day, and thank you for looking over each and every one of the people that need to survive this domestic violence. And thank you for everything that you do for all the people in this world, and I hope that things work out better. Amen.
So along with the Karuk tribe, we also have one of our partners is the Quartz Valley Indian Reservation. This is Sherry Williams, and she's a DV crisis worker. The Quartz Valley tribe is starting their own domestic violence program, along with the Karuk tribe, whom you're going to hear from next. You know, really wanting to address domestic violence in Indian country and just break that cycle so that we can move on and have healthy communities. So thank you.
Yes, and then we'll be having our candlelight vigil on Wednesday the 25th at 5:30 if you'd like to join us on Facebook Live. Thank you.
And we'll be posting that too as well on our Facebook page. Okay, so next I have Anthony Ballard, and he's the Tribal Victim Services Access Center Coordinator.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Ballard. I'm of Choctaw and Cherokee descent, and I currently work for the Karuk tribe as the Tribal Victim Services Access Center Coordinator. I am a survivor of domestic violence, as well as a former perpetrator. I'm also a survivor of human trafficking and sexual assault. I've spent the last 15 years battling these issues of domestic violence and sexual assault and human trafficking as a certified and licensed drug and alcohol counselor, a batterer's interventionist, and a victim's advocate. And I've been with the Karuk tribe for most of these years. Now, California has the highest number of Native Americans in the whole country. Yes, even more than Oklahoma or Arizona or Alaska. Northern California, and I mean north of Redding, is the home of 18 federally recognized tribes. The Klamath River is the home of the 2 largest tribes in the state of California, the Yurok tribe and the Karuk tribe. So I think it's safe to say that we live, work, and play in Indian country. When people ask me where I live, I jokingly respond by saying, we live in God's country, but we have to share it with the Indians and Bigfoot. Siskiyou County is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Just look, you see Mount Shasta, the pristine forests, the rivers, Kangaroo Lake. But in the midst of all this beauty is some darkness. Today I'd like to bring awareness to the issue of domestic violence. More specifically, domestic violence in Indian country. The statistics are staggering. According to the Association of American Indian Affairs, American Indians are 2.5 times as likely to experience violent crimes and at least 2 times more likely to experience rape or sexual assault crimes compared to all other races. More than 4 in 5 American Indian women, or 84.3%, have experienced violence in their lifetime. Homicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among American Indian women between the ages of 10 and 24. And the 5th leading cause of death for American Indian women between 25 and 34 years of age. In the United States and Canada, an average of 40% of the women who were victims of sex trafficking identified as American Indians. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Native American women are 3.5 times more likely to be raped or sexually assaulted than women of other races. Native American victims of intimate and family violence are more likely than victims of other races to be severely injured or hospitalized. Most American Indian adults are victims of violence. More than 4 in 5 American Indian adults, or 83%, have experienced some form of violence in their lifetime. That's more than 3 million people who have experienced psychological aggression or physical violence by intimate partners, stalking, or sexual violence. Now, women are not the only victims of domestic violence. American Indian women and men have been victimized at similar rates. 84.3% for women and 81.6% for men. They have experienced similar levels of psychological aggression and physical violence by intimate partners, but women have experienced significantly higher levels of sexual violence and stalking. Now I'd like to spend a minute on what I call the innocent victims, the children. Children are also greatly impacted by domestic violence. The Child Witness to Violence Project says at least 1/3 of American children have witnessed violence between their parents. Most have witnessed this violence multiple times. As many as 10 million children will witness domestic violence in this country this year. 75 to 87% of children who live in homes where there's domestic violence have observed violence at least once. And over 1/3 of children in one study reported seeing violence used by fathers against mothers when the parents claimed there was no violence. And the impact of domestic violence on our children is devastating. Most children who witness domestic violence manifest some symptoms associated with post-traumatic stress disorder. I read somewhere that the psychological wounds run much deeper and take longer and are harder to heal in children that witness domestic violence than in wartime veterans. Witnessing domestic violence affects children's abilities to learn. They may have difficulty focusing and concentrating in school. They are easily distracted. Witnessing violence affects children's behaviors, sometimes making it difficult to establish good peer relationships. And children who witness violence may be more aggressive and fight more often. The children that grow up with violence are at greater risk of becoming violent themselves. Domestic violence is an issue that cannot be ignored. It must not be ignored. Domestic violence is not a Native American tradition. Violence is not a Native American tradition. Abuse is not a Native American tradition. In most Native American cultures, beliefs, and traditions, women are considered to be sacred. They're the givers of life. They're leaders, they're nurturers, and they're protectors. Women are sacred and should be treated as such. I believe that for the Native population, culture and tradition are key elements in the provision of services and the most effective weapons in battling the domestic violence crisis. At the Karuk Tribe's Division of Victims Assistance, We use a culturally sensitive approach to support victims on their journey towards healing by providing advocacy and access to resources. We envision an empowered community that is united, healthy, and safe. This evening, I'm calling for a collaborative, coordinated response to address the domestic violence epidemic that we are all facing. I challenge the Karuk tribe, neighboring tribal nations, local governments, service providers, law enforcement, community partners, churches, and the community as a whole to come together and combat this issue. We are partners in this. We are not competitors. Together, we can do it. Stand strong. Thank you.
So, a couple of things that you said really struck out to me. One is that it takes all of us, all these people that are here today speaking at this vigil, we're all partners together. We all collaborate. I think one of our strengths in Siskiyou County is that we have personal relationships with each and every one of us. I can pick up the phone and call Anthony. I can pick up the phone and call the sheriff. I can pick up the phone and speak to the district attorney. And together we can really try and do something. I think even though Siskiyou County, sometimes we lack resources, I think our strength is our personal relationships that we have with each other and that we know each other. The two survivors that are going to speak tonight, I know them personally. So I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Carla Charaga, and I'm the Executive Director for Siskiyou Domestic Violence and Crisis Center. And we have been in this county providing services to domestic violence victims and sexual assault victims since 1981. We started off as a grassroots movement, but now we're a private 501c3 nonprofit organization. And really, we couldn't do this without all of you, without the community, and without our collaborative partners. And when I started working in this field back in 2004, I was nervous. I'd never worked in this type of work before. And I remember one of the interview questions was, what do you think is going to be the hardest part about this job? And I thought back then, I don't know if I can handle it emotionally. How can I handle women coming in? And this was my idea of what it was going to be like at work, black and blue and bruised or bloodied. But really, most of the time, we don't see the victims right in the immediate aftermath. We see them maybe a day or a few days later or a week later, sometimes months later, because that's how long it takes them to walk in through our office and get services. And what Anthony said about the impact on children, I think is very accurate. I left for a little bit and went to become a juvenile probation officer. And the kids that I had on my caseload that were the most difficult, that had the most lack of healing, were children that had grown up in domestic violence families. And so part of that kind of encouraged me to come back to the agency and keep working with those families. And a lot of the kids that I had on my caseload, I see them now as adults. They come in and they're either victims or they're perpetrators. And I really think it's going to take all of us to change it. Our goal is to get ourselves out of a job so that hopefully we don't have to exist as an agency. So I'm proud to introduce our next speaker, Sheriff LaRue. We couldn't do this type of work without law enforcement. And we really thank the Sheriff's Department because they're an incredible asset to us and are there for victims. And you guys really see the immediate aftermath. We see them a few days later as we do the civil restraining orders, but you guys do that. And it's one of the most dangerous calls out there for law enforcement is domestic violence calls. So welcome, thank you.
Well, good evening, and thank you for those that are joining us on Facebook and those that are in the room this evening. My name is Jeremiah LaRue. I'm the Sheriff of Siskiyou County, and What I'm hearing and that is really resonating with me is that we need to have a collaborative approach to domestic violence and ensuring that we work together to put an end to it in the county. And as we acknowledge October as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, let us be constantly mindful at the estimated 1.3 million women and 835,000 men that are victims of physical violence by a partner every year. As we consider these staggering numbers, let us be reminded also that these victims are those that are close to us, that are friends, family, loved ones. They may suffer in silence and daily feel hopeless and possibly abandoned. We need to remain strong and work together to provide victims and their families hope. Domestic violence affects our entire county, as you are hearing, and it must be something that everyone takes part to stand against. So on behalf of the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office, I would like to thank the advocates for your support, your comfort for those that are hurting, and all that you do to reduce the incidences of domestic violence and family violence that occur in and around Siskiyou County. And we say thank you to the victims of abuse that are joining us online and that we've heard from tonight, for the courage that it takes to stand up and to help others be strong and courageous. So we stand with you to stop domestic violence and family violence in all forms, and we pledge as law enforcement to vigorously pursue criminal investigations to address the all too common domestic violence related offenses that frequently traumatize many victims in our community. And we stand ready to assist the victims and all of them, from private, tribal, and governmental organizations, to more aggressively and effectively respond to domestic violence incidents now and until it is no longer occurring in our communities. We stand ready to contribute to the solution, response, prevention, education, criminal investigations, prosecution, rehabilitation, treatment, and other programs that help victims, children, and our communities. So thank you for allowing me the honor to come here this evening and to speak with you and share some thoughts. If you don't know what to do or don't know how to help someone in need, consider contacting law enforcement to seek guidance or reach out to the Siskiyou County Domestic Violence and Crisis Center. But don't be silent. You may be the person that helps someone who is struggling. Thank you.
So another partner that we would not be able to do this without their help is the District Attorney's Office. So next I have Melissa Wetstein. Am I saying that right? You are. Okay, good. She's the Senior Deputy District Attorney for Siskiyou County. And she's going to kind of come up and talk to us about domestic violence from the DA's perspective.
Thank you for letting me be here. On behalf of Kirk Andrus, please excuse his absence. Hopefully I'll be able to do him some justice in the message that he wants to send to our community. As I prepared for this message, I couldn't help but recall a time in court. Her hands trembled on the table, not like the kind when you were going to the boss's office, wondering if you were going to be fired, but so uncontrollable, it almost resembled the fall leaves in a strong wind at the end of their lifespan. She tried to extend her fingers so that my examining eyes would not see this trembling, but instead her hands flapped like a fish out of water on the witness stand, and it was causing a hollow slapping sound to boom through the microphone and throughout the courtroom. The 16 pairs of eyes of the jury turned towards her. As I saw her look up from the sound, I could see that in the corner of her eye, that a tear had welled up and started to roll down the bridge of her nose. It came to rest softly on her cheek. Her black hair fell into her face and stuck to the semi-dry tears that streaked her face. I softened my tone and did what I had to do. I asked her, "Who was it that hit you?" Sitting diagonal not 50 yards away, a seemingly unassuming, suited man sat with his hands steadily crossed in front of him on top of the table. I watched her eyes move from the witness stand to his calloused hands after I asked her the question. Even I noticed his thick thumbs of the man who was acting so innocent. They were crossed on top of each other in perfect stillness, so unlike hers. His eyes pierced across from the room in a dead stare past the reporter, past the bailiff, and straight to the witness stand. I watched as his lips moved towards her and silently said, "I love you." It was a deafening silence in the courtroom. When I was in that courtroom, and as I stand here now, we are at war. That's what I thought to myself then, and it's what I think to myself now. In this country, and in Siskiyou, a war is being waged. Unlike other wars, this one is not a loud war being fought between enemy countries. More often than not, the stories of this war fail to be the center of national news or any news, except for that rare case like we've recently heard of Gabby Petito. This is a war of deafening silence, a war with a battlefield that is right inside of the comfort of our own homes and of our own community. It is a war about domestic abuse. It is a war against the financial abuse which traps someone in silence. It is a war against the emotional abuse where someone forgets how valuable they are. And it is a war against the manipulation and fear of physical abuse. From the age of 15 to 44, domestic abuse is the leading cause of injury to women, more than car accidents, muggings, and rapes combined. Every 9 seconds in the U.S., a woman is assaulted or beaten, more often than not, by her intimate partner. 1 in 7 men will experience domestic violence abuse at some point in their lifetimes. And statistics show that every day, even today, 3 women were murdered at the hand of their intimate partner. Even more frightening, 3 million children witness domestic violence in their home. Boys who witness their parents' domestic violence are twice as likely to abuse their own intimate partner as adults. Girls who witness domestic violence or abuse in their home are 50% more likely to become a victim of domestic abuse themselves as adults. All of these children are more likely to suffer the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, which will mark their entire life. How do we win this war? How do we win over this silence? I think a good starting point is to thank some of those who are in the trenches fighting this war right now. Warriors who are in my presence, here in this room and online. On behalf of the District Attorney's Office, I want to recognize those of you in attendance who have lost a loved one. I am here to say, we hear you. We hear you screaming to break the silence against this war. Starting foremost with you all sharing the story of your loved one who has raged against the silence and wasn't able to win. Our advocates out there, we see you. We see how you show up at the hospital at midnight to greet a victim while they await medical care. We see you hold their hand even though they may not have the strength or courage yet to tell you what happened to them. We see you when you drive the victim to a safe shelter and watch as you tell them that it's okay to breathe now. They are in a safe place. To our brothers and sisters in blue and green, since we have the sheriff here, We feel you. We feel that you're being told that you shouldn't be funded or that you can be replaced. I am here to say, we know we can't fight this war without you. We know you are the people who race to the scene when a 911 call comes in. We know you are the ones that brush off the shards of glass from a victim who stood below a breaking plate. We know you are the ones who find the victim crumpled on the ground, confused, and most of all, silent. We know you are the warriors in this war, the war against this silence. To the community who knows that someone is being abused, the district attorney's office challenges you to become warriors. It's easy to say that what happens inside of the confines of our own home is just that and should remain there, inside our own home. But that's not the case with domestic abuse. Those children in your home may become the love of the child next door in that abusive home. You know, the ones that are 50% more likely to abuse their intimate partner because they unviewed violence between their parents. We challenge you to make sure that your neighbor who sits next to you in church or at the local restaurant is able to show up. We challenge you to know that your report may be the only one who has the courage to make, because no one inside of your neighbor's four walls feels they can. Their abuse has left them silent. To our community, the district attorney's office dedicates itself to rage against this war. We will continue to work with our law enforcement partners to sharpen their skills in identifying and documenting suspected abuse. We will always seek out the educated assistance of our crisis advocates and work collaboratively as those abused start to shed the fear and break their silence. We will prosecute to the fullest extent of our possibility, whether or not a victim speaks to us. We will use all the evidence that we have to continue to loudly wage this war in court, even if the victim is paralyzed in silence. To the victims out there, you have a community here. Right here in this room with our crisis center and with our law enforcement. Your community is here waiting to hear your story and to provide services to support you. You are not stuck where you are. Give us the chance and we will show you the way out. In that courtroom, I thought about all the people who had helped this stunning black-haired beauty and how she walked to the witness stand to wage her war against her silence. The advocates were there, trying to keep her eyes trained on them as she testified. The crisis advocate who helped and held her hand at Fairchild Medical Center sat in the front pew, giving her strength. I turned to the law enforcement officer who responded to this house 34 times before he had taken the picture that was behind her, taking all of the actions to preserve the 911 calls and photographs, the evidence that I could use to help her voice be heard in court. All these warriors waging the war against silence in one room. I couldn't be more proud. Don't say you love me. It's you who did this. She pointed her finger to the poster-sized portrait of her bruised face that was behind her. Her voice, like a roar, broke the silence. This is how we rage against the war of domestic abuse, one voice at a time, one victim at a time, and together we will win.
So when I reached out to the next two survivors that are going to speak, I wasn't sure if they were going to say yes to me. But one of them answered me right away, like, yes, I want to do this. I'm really nervous about this. I've never told my story. I can't promise you that I'm not going to cry, but I think it's time. It's going to help me heal. And so she's our next speaker. I know that this is a big healing for her. The survivor after that, she took a little longer to respond. In fact, she didn't even answer me on Messenger, but I know where she works. So I was getting adjusted at my chiropractor, and she works there, and she came in, and she's like, I'm going to do it, I swear I'm going to do it. I know I haven't answered you, but yes. And she said the same thing. I can't promise I'm not going to cry. So I told both of them, it's okay. We just want to hear your story. You know, there's something very powerful about hearing from someone that it happened to. You know, I can work with victims day in and day out, and yet my testimony is not going to be as intense or as powerful as you coming up here and sharing your story. And it's part of taking that power back. And I know it takes a lot of courage, so I am very, very, very proud of both of you. So my first survivor is Tracy Long. Come on up.
Okay, bear with me. Hi, my name is Tracy Long, and I would like to give a special thanks to Carla for inviting me to speak today, and also to the Crisis Center and the Sheriff's Department for being there when I really needed them, because I would not be standing here if it wasn't for you guys. So I'm standing here today alive 4 years, 7 months, and 6 days out of my relationship, my abusive relationship. Yes, I keep count. My story's a little extreme, and this is going to be the first time I actually said it out loud outside of a courtroom, so just bear with me, because I'm probably going to cry. To understand me, you have to understand my mother and the pain that she suffered. I witnessed her life get ripped away from her, and I thought it was my fault. I'm the product of a teen pregnancy. Most of those marriages end in divorce. And then after that, she met my stepfather, who was a very violent man. And I was taken away from her because of that relationship. So for the first 10 years of my life, most of the feelings that I had were feeling unsafe and incredibly lonely. And that was not having a mother and a father left me feeling like a burden for most of my life. And that's until I met John. I think about the first day that I laid eyes on him and what I thought was the love of my life more often than I should. He seemed so kind and generous, and he was really handsome and very charming. I couldn't even believe that he had picked me to be his person. I had so many issues already. I had my own teen pregnancy at the time, but John didn't care, and he accepted my son as his own. Little did I know I was mirroring exactly what my mother went through. The first year was really intoxicating. He really got me. It seemed like he knew me inside and out. We were finishing each other's sentences by 3 months. I fell fast and hard for him. He was from Arizona, and I had always wanted to move to California, so we did. I had no idea that that was the beginning of him isolating me. John was quite a bit older than me, about 7 years, and he had 2 children before me. I was not his first victim. I was his third. We had been together for nearly 6 months the first time he put his hands on me, and I can replay the exact situation in my brain still to this day in the form of a PTSD flashback. He had drank too much that day and gotten into an argument and ended up in the drunk tank. I went back home and I fell asleep, and 4 hours later I woke up to glass shattering above my head. When I saw his face, I jumped up and I was really excited to see him, because I didn't know if he was going to be gone for a while or how any of that was going to go. And I was met, instead of with a warm greeting, a really hard slap across my face, so hard that it made my ears ring. And that was the first time I disassociated. I don't remember much else from that night, probably out of shock. However, the next morning was great. I was met with breakfast in bed, fresh flowers, and lots of tears and apologies and hugs. He felt bad and explained to me that he had a terrible anger issue. But he said that I handled it so well. Like I should have gotten a trophy for the unhealthy trauma response of disassociating. And that's exactly what he needed to calm down. Shortly after I got pregnant with our daughter, and he had a warrant and missed out on most of our pregnancy. It was fine. I'd already had my son alone, so waiting for him to get out of jail was not going to be that big of a deal. I remained faithful, writing letters, sending pictures. I was excited the day he got out to start our life over. I was unaware that the warrant was for nearly killing the woman before me. You couldn't find things like that back then. The internet wasn't so widely available, or maybe I just really didn't want to know. When he got out, I thought our family would be together and we would be happy. I thought he would be proud of how good I was while he was gone. Unfortunately, that's not how abusers think. Instead of recognizing my loyalty as a positive, he saw me as an easy target. We cycled through abusive episodes every 3 to 6 months. It was almost like clockwork. Of course, always followed by tears and apologies. I used to lie to myself and say that I was just in a passionate relationship. Abuse doesn't happen all at once. It grows. It grows like mold. I put under a semi-truck after being beaten bloody with an stand-up fan. I've worn makeup so thick that I looked like a clown to cover bruises on my face more times than I can count. I've been beaten so bad a few times that my own children didn't recognize me the next morning. I've had to lie to employers and friends about why I needed to take time off and why I had marks around my neck. All the while still trying to hold on to some idea of a nuclear family construct that I was taught that was so important. I wasn't going to be like my mom. I wasn't going to lose my family. Obviously, I was doing something wrong. I'll just stop talking back and make sure the dishes are washed and that there's dinner on the table. I'll give up on my dreams. I'll give him my debit card because I'm really bad with money anyway. I'll stop talking to my friends. I won't get my license renewed because I'm not really a good driver. I'll be as accommodating as possible, and I will do my best to be his peace. Yeah, that'll work. I can honestly tell you that none of that works. On March 15th, 2017, in Dunsmuir, California, the father of my children and what I thought was the love of my life tried to murder me. I'm sure he was going to kill me that night. I had gone to bed and he had stayed out drinking. He got home around 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was woken up to him grabbing me by the ankles and pulling me to the end of the bed. He began strangling me, and I would pry his fingers off my throat, and he began kicking me in my head with his steel-toe boots. I really have no idea how long that went on for, but it felt like forever. I remember almost getting away and being dragged back down the hallway by my hair to the bedroom so he could try to strangle me some more. I finally made it to my safe place, the bathroom, where I knew if I could just get in and shut and lock the door, he would eventually go to bed. I remember sitting there and feeling really dizzy, and I knew something was wrong. Something was really wrong this time, and I needed to get some help. I was in nothing but a tank top and my underwear, and blood was dripping onto my bare legs. If I didn't get out of that house, I was going to die, and I knew it. I think the hardest question when writing this speech was, how did you get the courage and the strength to leave? And when I first read that question, I thought to myself, I didn't have the strength or the courage. But looking back on it now, running out of that house to the neighbors and banging on the door was the most courageous thing I've ever done in my life. I do feel like Creator has a purpose for me because I made it out of that house alive. If my neighbor had not opened that door, John would have finished me off. There's no doubt in my mind. I fell out and had a seizure in my neighbor's house, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up in Redding in the hospital with a massive brain bleed. It took months of rehabilitation for my motor skills to come back 100%, and I still have trauma-based nystagmus, which makes my eyes shake uncontrollably sometimes. I will say that night was the worst and the best thing that's ever happened to me. I still struggle with trusting people. I have PTSD. I'm impulsive. I can't seem to make a romantic relationship work anymore. Depression creeps up on me more than I'd like, and I struggle with periodic alcoholism. Even with all those negative effects, what I can say is waking up in that hospital, it was like years of brainwashing just shattered like a piece of glass, and I could see for the first time that life doesn't have to be like that. I wake up now and I don't have to survive the day. I can be authentically myself, and I am free. I will not stand here and tell you that it's easy to leave or to begin healing, but I can tell you that it's worth it. Don't get it as bad as I did. Educate yourself on the cycle of abuse and what emotional abuse is, and run from any situation that meets that criteria. For those who have been in similar situations as me, talk about it. Talk to your friends, talk to your therapist. Find something spiritual that fills your soul. All these things can help tremendously, and at the end of the day, though, you're going to be in charge of your own healing. We are so worth more than what our abusers have done to us. For those worried about family members and friends who may be in abusive situations, pick up the phone and call the police. Report it. I promise you they will thank you in the long run. Thank you for listening to me today, and I hope my words comfort those that are in pain. And no matter how you feel, you're not alone.
Thank you, Tracy. I feel like I have to take a deep breath. Thank you so much. That was very powerful. I appreciate it. Okay, so our next speaker is Gail Levy. You make my job worth it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Gail Levy. The truth is that I wish that I wasn't here today. But if my story can help just one person, it's worth it. I want to tell my story. I want to prove to him that I'm not afraid of him anymore. The truth is, I still am a little bit afraid, but it's different now. He was tall, dark and handsome. He was abusive. He was charming, and everyone loved him. He love-bombed me. He alienated me. He took a lot of things from me, my confidence, my self-worth, my self-esteem, my freedom, and even my thoughts. I was his slave and a prisoner in our own home. To others, he portrayed himself as a loving husband and father, and I made excuses for his behavior. I am a survivor. I was a victim of verbal, emotional, mental, financial, and sometimes sexual and physical abuse. I left him 3 times. Statistics show that a woman goes back 7 times. 7. I left him for 2 weeks. When I was 4 months pregnant, we had a 1-year-old. In January 2011, he was arrested at our home for battery on his spouse and endangerment to our children. We left. My girls were 1 and 2 years old. After a few weeks, I dropped our restraining order, and that was by far the biggest mistake that I could have made. Do not drop your restraining order. It's nearly impossible to have it put back in place. 5 years later, I'm ashamed to say that I went back again. He didn't change. They never change. It has been nearly 9 years. He told me I would be nothing without him. So I found my voice, and I learned to love myself again. I built up my self-esteem. I bought a house. And with the help of my brother, I followed a dream, and we opened a successful restaurant together. The road here was hard, with many ups and even more downs. But for my girls, I have built a safe and loving home. We have built a life that we love. I want to remind you that our past doesn't define us, and that all of us are worthy of love. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody, for coming, for watching our Facebook Live, for watching this video on YouTube when we get it polished up and finished. Thank you to all the speakers for coming, for collaborating with us, for working with us. I want to thank Natalie and her husband, Miles. You don't see them, they're behind the scenes, but they're doing all the filming and honestly, it feels like we're in a Hollywood movie right now. So we appreciate it. But most of all, thank you to the audience that's out there. I know I feel like I'm talking into thin air, but hopefully someone is hearing these stories behind the camera out there virtually, and that story is going to help somebody out there get their life together and maybe start to heal. We talked a lot about women because statistically speaking, it is a gender-based crime, but men are affected as well, and as well as family violence. So if it's you or somebody that you love, please reach out to us. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline where somebody answers. You won't get an answering machine. And our phone number is 1-877-842-4068. And thank you again for helping us bring awareness to such an important issue. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So thank you very much.
Wanna come home to roses and dirty little notes on post-its. And when my hair starts turning gray, you'll say I'm like fine wine, better with age. Guess I learned it from my parents that true love starts with friendships. A kiss on the forehead, a date night, fake an apology after a fight. I need a man who's patient and kind, gets out of the car and holds the door. I want a slow dance in the living room like we're 18 at senior prom and grown old with someone who makes me feel young. I need a man who loves me like my father loves my mom. I want a road trip in the summers. I wanna make fun of each other. I wanna rock out to Billy Joel and flip our kids off when they call us old. He'll accidentally burn our dinner and let me be the Scrabble winner. And when my body changes shapes, he'll say, oh my God,